Good Tuesday afternoon to you. Welcome to Enforcing the Fundamentals with Doug Harding. I'm Matt, and this other guy here, as you may have already guessed, is Doug. How's it going, Doug? What's going on?
Hey guys. Hey Matt.
How have you been over the last week? We got one a week for 2 weeks. That's pretty good. We're back on a roll here. I don't want to say the S word. We're not there yet. But,
Yeah. 2 weeks in a row, though. That's getting to be good. We'll shoot for a record.
2-0 is pretty solid start, I'd say.
Yeah.
But it's not the start of the season right now. We are into the waning days of the NHL and basically every other hockey league season. What's on your mind about the end of season so far and whatever you've been watching? I know you watch a lot of stuff, a lot of local stuff. You keep your tabs on the juniors and the major junior leagues. What's going on out there that's got your attention?
Well, the local group at the junior A level has really done exceptionally well this year. New coach, new players, the fan support for a small community in northern BC is unbelievable. I wished I'd had that kind of support when I'd been in the bigger cities. I mean, their arena is full all the time. They're enthusiastic to go, even when they weren't having such great years. It's a really good, strong support community up here. So. So
now is that the 100 Mile House League, or are you going into Williams Lake?
That's 100 Mile, but Williams Lake is part of that. Cornell is part of that. That it's a whole new structuring of junior A hockey, basically across the country. I know the BC Junior Hockey League is going through a transition, and be interesting to see where it's all going to go. But it just keeps going year after year. It keeps going. But yeah, the local junior A team, they've done an exceptional job. They've basically dwelled close to the bottom for the last more than few years, and they've established themselves. They actually finished first in their division this year, which was I got out to see a few games. It's just nice to see what kind of effort and the changes in the game that the coaches themselves are making. It's a good thing. And I got out to watch some minor hockey this year. It was really kind of interesting. I met a young hockey player when I went to help as a volunteer at the school, and their principal introduced me as a hockey guy, and he was Marshall's a pretty exceptional kid. If you want to talk hockey, I don't know what the rest of his life is, but he sure is enthusiastic, and he's for a small community that doesn't have a whole lot of specific and specialized training. He's a really good young hockey player. He's like one that I would I'm going to follow for as long as I can. Jump in the car and go to the arena and watch to see who's doing what.
And that's fantastic. That I feel like those empty seats, or lack thereof, I should say, it's that small town mentality. It's not just so and so's kids playing in there, or my kids playing in there. There's not a lot to do. You don't have as many options in those smaller towns. And I think a lot of players could really benefit from that, because, I mean, you're down in the lower mainland. You have so much stuff to do, or any major city, really. The kids' hockey game is not always your top priority. What do you think that does to sort of the mentality of a player? We're down here in the lower mainland, Vancouver. You might get 100 players or 100 people watching the game in the stands, whereas up there you have several hundred that are in. And I'm probably screwing these numbers up, because Lord knows I haven't spent a whole lot of time in the 100 Mile House rink, but just sort of that increased attendance on the mentality of these kids that are in the smaller communities. What do you think's goes there?
I mean, the lower mainland, what do you got? 2 million people with all the communities there together, and you've got all of
Mhm.
the junior teams starving. I mean, for
And
the
not and I don't
survival of
just mean
hockey.
just that. We have movies, concerts,
Oh
nightclubs,
yeah, 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 yeah. No, no.
pubs.
I'm saying
I mean,
there's so much to go on. We have all of that up here too. We,
well,
I mean, we've got a community of what do we have here in 100 Mile for population? Um, 3.5, 4,000 people,
mhm.
and we have a hockey game, and 800 people show up, and
That's
you
a
can't
good
find a
chunk.
seat. Oh, last time I
I
went,
mean
I had to stand. There was
I mean, that's a couple 100,000 people trying to show up to a Canucks game if you're looking at it percentage-wise, person to person. So that's nothing to sneeze at.
that's community support. When they were losing, when a few years ago when I went to see them, guess what? They had the same amount of people there. I think it's a little harder if you go too late to get a seat. A seat now, but even back then, uh, the place was full, and people were enthusiastic. And the amazing part about the whole thing is the range in age of the people that come to support their local sports team is phenomenal. Like there are a ton of old people like me, and there are a ton of young kids racing around banging on the glass. Not racing around chasing each other, but they're just right into it. It's been really refreshing to see that small community attitude towards
Mhm.
supporting their local guys. And the teams aren't local players either. I mean, there are some locals on it, but lots of these kids come in to play here. They got kids from Alberta, the lower mainland, other places in the Cariboo. They've even got kids that come from Saskatchewan. And I think those kids all come from small communities themselves. So they appreciate the fact that all of the hockey faithful of 100 Miles show up on a regular basis, whether they're great or whether they're not so great.
Mhm.
Their support is there for them. So love to see that in the lower mainland.
Yeah, no doubt. I think anybody would really like to see that. I mean, you're not charging for tickets sort of at that level, or you're not charging much at the very least, especially probably in a small community. But it's got to be a little healthier for the kids' egos when they're in there doing that. And I guess on the flip side, a little more detrimental too. But like you were saying, these are diehard fans, diehard supporters, I guess, to use a slightly different term, meaning it doesn't really matter to them, you know, what how well the season's going for the team. They're there for the kids. They're there to see what's going on, be entertained, see a good game because a good hockey game does not need a $900 nosebleed ticket to exist.
No, no, I, like I said, it's that whole situation. Watching that is really revived some of my own enthusiasm to that it is all about community and kids coming in. The kids are coming in to hopefully continue their hockey hopes. Uh,
Well, yeah.
and like I said, it's a tough hockey hope. It gets harder and harder every year, and every step that you want to climb. And but they, they come the way they play their hearts out. The people appreciate that. Everybody loves to win, no question about that. But they're not going to. It does not seem that they're going to withdraw their support because they're not winning. They're going to
Hmm.
give as much vocal support as they can. I mean, when they're scoring goals down here, it's 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 quite a community thing, and uh, in terms of the percentage of the people in the area that support it. A lot of them are supporting it because it's probably hockey, but
Hmm.
they're supporting it because it's 100 Mile. And
Hmm.
then they're supporting it is because of the kids that are playing for the reputation of
Hmm.
100 Mile. So there's a lot of community. pride involved in the athletics. Like I would I can't speak for every community. Maybe I've just landed in the one that's amazing. But yeah, this whole restructuring of the leagues in the last year or so has brought in, like Cornell wasn't here and Williams Lake wasn't here, and you got teams like Merritt coming over out of the BC Hockey League, and it's going to take a lot of just general restructuring, but it'll be all interesting to see what happens. Like uh, I follow it because I love to see what changes they're going to make. You know, what changes would I have made? What changes are they making? And
There you go.
community support is. Uh, we did okay in Duncan, um, but I think we as a team, not as far as the players and playing on the ice, but as a structure, which a lot of people forget. I think we could have done more. It was that so many people with the Cowichan Valley Capel were not Cowichan Valley people to
Mm-hmm.
begin with. They were Victoria people that, because they lost an arena before the year opened,
Mm-hmm.
moved it to Duncan. And I know in the beginning they were just looking for an opportunity because they were Victoria people trying to build something for Victoria. And at the last minute, it didn't work out. And they tried to, actually, they did move it back to Victoria, the same ownership. And then they finally sold it and it went back to Cowichan people. So it was out of Cowichan for a little while, but didn't detract from the kids. The kids were an amazing challenge.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, there were
Um,
a complimation, or a complement of players who played against each other as far as local.
mm-hmm.
We brought in some of the development kids. We did some work with Spokane to bring the Danny Hodgsons and Dean Kalkas and Rick Nisham, and they
Glenn
all
Culkin,
came from
yeah,
Spokane's camp, but
yeah.
most of them were junior B kids the year before that were very competitive against each other. They came from the Cowichan Valley Junior B team and the Esquimalt Junior B team and the Oak Bay Junior B team, and they all didn't like each other very much. So it was really, but they bonded really, really quickly. But I mean, the young players, like the ones I had mentioned before,
Mm-hmm.
and they were the glue. They're yeah, all the rivalry, because one of the big things is going back to college. That was an amazing year for a complete hockey story. There were a number of kids who, when we got to cutting down to the team, were wondering whether they should play there or not because their good buddy from Duncan or their good buddy from Saanich Junior B
Mm-hmm.
Braves or their good buddy from Oak Bay was cut, and they didn't know. And in those days, those guys basically had to travel every day from
Mm-hmm.
Victoria. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't have enough money to budget billeting, and the billeting that we did have, we barely had enough, and we had to move so many kids around because people weren't sure what a billet's responsibility were, and you run into all kinds of situations. But when we got it together, the glue actually was the fact that they put all their pasts away, and we weren't supposed to win anything. Basically, I mean, we
Nope,
had
you
an
were not,
average
and
age of 16 for a
that
junior A
changed,
team
didn't
at
it?
20, and we didn't lose a game at home all season long. So that was due specifically to the character of guys like, you know, Tracy Patterson, who had been the captain at Saanich, and Len Myers, and who had been in Duncan, and the young kids like I said, like Hodgson and Eveson and Golka, and you know,
Mhm.
they all, the thing for them is they all wanted to be better, and they wanted the opportunity to prove that they could be, something more than somebody who played junior B. And I
Hmm.
guess the big shocker was is we played a couple exhibition games against senior teams. I think who did we play? Or intermediate teams, actually, I should say. Uh, and we did pretty well in those games. And then we played the Victoria Cougars. In They had just cut down too close to their team, not their team, and we beat them twice. And that just lit a fire under those kids. They began to believe that they were more than something. Oh, wait, how do we get back to talking
Oh, no,
challenges?
we just went on.
Sorry,
It's
buddy.
small town hockey. That's fine.
Yeah.
We've covered some of that before. Some of that was new. Some of it we'll cover later on. Anybody interested, go back and find our Danny Hodgson episode. That was really insightful on his
Oh,
career and coming out of there. I
yeah.
don't want to start dropping names until I have everything sewn up, but I have had a couple of back and forth exchanges with another member of that team. So hopefully we can get his story in the near future.
It's a great
One
story.
afternoon. It is. I like I said, I don't want to say anything here yet until I have something locked down. But what a interesting athletic career that was.
Oh, God.
I cannot wait to talk to him about it. So hopefully I can sort of get that one all sewn up in the next week or so here, and we'll make that announcement down the line. You had an interesting moment there. You had said an interesting word to me because I did have something teed up to talk about, have a discussion about. You said the word believe.
Mm.
Um, how important is that word in a locker room?
That is the word in the locker room. I mean,
That's it. That's the
with it,
one.
if there's anything that will make you better or give you more success going into something, not knowing what it is or isn't, belief is
Hmm.
by far has the most influence over what success can or can't be. I mean, there's nothing greater for me, and I mean, I've been a proponent of you know mental hockey. I don't know whether I was a good coach at coaching on the ice for practices or
Hmm.
benches but you know what, I think that the thing that made the most difference to my ability to do it was I had to believe in them, and I had to make them believe in themselves. And um, the success that I've had at that is probably my career successes. Lots and lots of times we've had teams that weren't particularly very good, but you made them believe that no matter what their circumstance was, they can be up the ladder two more rungs than what they
Hmm.
believe they can. And uh, I think I think uh, I think that's probably what my greatest success was. Like I said,
Hmm.
there's lots of people that I knew that were better at making up practices and running practices, and people that coached better games and for different reasons for this or that. There are certainly better coaches who were more determined to win and yeah, did win because of the things that they did do, and where I think we won because as a group we believe that we could and or we believe that we can be at a better or higher level. So
Hmm.
um, yeah, it's yeah, I tend not to think of my hockey um, abilities as being instructional. Other than skill, I got into skill in the younger years for hockey
Hmm.
players, and I love skill development for kids. But my success as a coach were the mental parts of making people believe.
Right. Now, I'm touching on that because there is a coach in pop culture lately that is very famous for writing that word on a piece of paper and sticking it above his office door.
Mm.
Um,
I
Ted
had it above
Lasso.
my office long before he had it
Well,
above
see,
his.
there we go. That's what I wanted to talk about. So
Yeah.
I saw Ted Lasso. It's one of those ones I had heard about. I picked it up. I watched it. I thought, you know what? This cast looks funny. Let's see what's going on. And I ended up hearing a lot of things that I had heard through my childhood, up to and including the sign deal. Um, so I finally got you to sit down. We discussed this last week where
Yeah.
you took a weekend that was supposed to be a nice family weekend. We had family in from the other side of the country that we don't often see. And because Vancouver is very wet in the spring, we weren't able to get out of the house as much as we would have liked. So we ended up sitting there watching all of Ted Lasso. Hopefully
Yeah.
season 4 is great, but for those that don't know, check it out on Apple TV. It is worth every second of your time. But Ted has a very um, positive attitude, toxically positive, really, because you can't bring the man down. He's got his believe sign, and he's got all these wonderful little gems for coaching, including, as we discussed last week, be a goldfish. The goldfish is the happiest creature on the planet because its memory rolls over every few seconds. And his advice to a player after a bit of a misplay was be a goldfish.
Be a
Just
goldfish.
forget
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
And that's got to work both sides. Would you not agree? Like, great, you just scored the all-time, highlight of the year goal, touchdown, home run, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Be a goldfish still.
Yeah, you have to be a goldfish, and this is going to be an extremely strange thing for me to say, and like you said, you have to be a goldfish on both ends of it. And the strange thing about that is, I've had some really big success with teams that have done amazing things, in Europe and in international tournaments, and where we've done really, really well at the beginning of year and been really successful. And because we didn't put it away and continue, you always go into a slump. And I see that happening all the time in sports. You have a failure, you find a positive attitude, get it together, and get going. You can't remember like the goldfish is a great
Mhm.
example. I love the goldfish. It's like you say though, on both sides. If you win, you got to put it away if you want to continue to win, because it's not the end of something and a restarting of something. It's all a continuation of something, and the
Mhm.
continuation of that positive spirit. But yeah, like you had kept telling me you got to watch this show. You got to watch this show, and I think for a couple of years. And
Mhm.
when I watched it, I thought it was not only hilarious. I thought it was some really deep thinking that people would have normally just thought is funny. But
Mhm.
I don't know who his writers were, but they've spent some time thinking
Actually,
on doing this and or that. So
so the writers were the Ted himself, Jason Sudeikis, uh, Brett Brett Goldberg, who played Roy Kent, and
I
I
love
can't
him.
remember his name. I'm gonna have to call up the IMDb page, but Coach Beard.
Yeah,
Those were your three
those
writers.
those are the three
Three
guys
of
who
the
were the
writers.
writers. That's awesome. That's just awesome. It's I would be extremely proud to be associated with being a part of their group. Uh, I find, they're I find when the things were down, they were entertaining enough for their people to get up. And I mean, I know it's a TV show. Oh, is it coming back? Somebody said something about.
It is. It is
I
coming
mentioned
back,
that the other
and
day. I,
yeah,
Same
no, I was
people.
telling you that. Same
Yeah.
people.
Oh, it was you.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
it was.
I'll I'll have
Yeah,
to find
so
a
Brett
time to come
Goldstein,
down
Jason
and binge watch
Sudeikis.
with you.
and Brendan Hunt is the other gentleman's name that I was thinking of. And
Uh-huh.
those, the three coaches. If you haven't seen it yet, I just spoiled the end of season 1 for you, or in the middle of season 2. So sorry about that, but get on it. Here's the thing about that show, though, is I've had Apple TV for a couple of years, and that show is never not in the top 5 or 10 shows streaming on
Really?
that
It's
network.
amazing.
So um, they did a really good job, I found personally. Because like
Mhm.
I said, I'm hearing stuff on the TV, I'm seeing stuff on the TV that I was like, somebody told, I've heard that somewhere before, and it was you. Well, so they put, I found they put a lot of effort into getting the coaching aspects right.
Mm.
It's
I think it's right.
the
Well,
well, they
their
do.
depth of their thought and the reasoning to come on a positive way. I know they've done a couple where Ted sort of slipped away and did a couple of negative sessions
Mhm,
on it, and sometimes that's what makes the positive so strong, is that there's a realization that every once in a while that right and wrong, the positive will certainly do your team
mhm.
more value than what the negative would. But yeah, like yeah, I was quite amazed by the whole show. Sorry
Yeah.
for binge watching and keeping you all up
Oh
on that.
God, no! I will rewatch Ted Lasso at the drop of a hat. If it was
Mm-hmm.
on anything that was just sort of terrestrial TV, I just sort of turn the channel on.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I see it, I would stop. If I was channel surfing and found it, I would stop. I go to Apple TV if I'm bored. If I'm looking for something new to watch, I'll look at Ted Lasso and go, "Oh, that's I won't be able to stop." It's like Doritos. You can't have just one. You
Yeah,
need to keep going,
yeah.
and it's
Well, I
short enough.
prefer to Mark Messier and his
Ruffles.
potato chips.
Yeah. The pylons. Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the other tactics Ted takes, he's dealing with a bit of a prima donna player in Jamie Tart.
Hmm.
He can't get through to him. Jamie is not on board with an American football coach coming in that doesn't know anything about it, and so he has to break out Led Tasso, the evil, angry version of Ted Lasso. Not only was it absolutely hysterical, um, but that shift in a coach's methods with a player. Now, normally you're pretty good. I was really, really adept for a lot of years at bringing out your version of Led Tasso. Uh, like drop of a hat, I can pull that off. That, but what are the benefits to sort of taking that almost 180 or changing an attitude's direction towards a player that's maybe um, not on board with the rest of the team? Because it could be anything. It could be a prima donna attitude. He could be, dealing with a slump. You could be dealing with any number of things uh, in and out of the locker room, on and off the field or the ice. Just that one player that is not quite the black sheep, but bit of stray cattle, and then getting your attitude adjusted so that you can bring that one back to the fold. What are your
It's it's.
thoughts
I
there?
mean, that's the ultimate goal, and I mean, looking at a and quite a bit of the time, it's a player like him. He
Mhm,
can be incredibly uh, positive for his contribution to what your ultimate goal is, to be the best you
mhm,
can or win, you know, or win. Uh, he's an integral part of. You've got to do whatever you've got to do. Same thing when your team goes in the tank. You've got to
mhm,
do what you've got to do. I mean, a lot of people say, "Well, I'm always so laid back. I'm always so, I should press my kids harder. I should do this or that." They get enough press harder in practices and games are their. I wouldn't say their responsibility, but the game is played by them. You instruct them to be as good as they can when it comes to the ultimate performance. But the performance is theirs. But you need your best players to be your best players. I think the
Mm-hmm.
Canucks have struggled a little bit with that this year, um, but you need them in the fold. And basically, you got to do what you got to do. I know I've gone in and tossed some pucks on the floor and kicked over a few garbage cans that
Mm-hmm.
have all been just a performance for the dressing room. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that's to bring the whole dressing room back to a reality. I'm pretty sure every time I've done that, one of the highlights that of the players in that room are, wow, we better do something about this. But
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of like cold water in the face. It's a difference from what the norm is. If the norm isn't working, but if you do that, your norm still has to go back to the positive aspects of what the
Mm-hmm.
game are. So it's kind of like that's a little bit like I said, you got to throw a little cold water in their face, and once they're awake, you know, you can go back to okay, I'm upset, but I'm not upset with you now. I was upset then. What can we do about it? Can we go out there? Can we, perform like I know we can? And no team performs at I know we all expect our professional teams that we follow the most or that we have the most admiration. They should go out and be 100% perfect every game.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're not, you know, why? Look at all the money they're making. But then again, consider that like I told one dad, you go to work every day. Is every day your best day? So
Mm-hmm.
what are the expectations? Oh well, they're making a whole lot more money. Well, money's got nothing to do with it when you hit the ice. Money
I
has got
don't
nothing to do with it when you hit
I
the
don't
ice.
know if that's 100% true, but hear me out
Yeah.
on this thought.
Yes.
I would
Please go.
think that that exact thought, that exact, well, they're making a lot more money than I am.
A lot
I
more
think that
money
would
than
add to the pressure and
it does.
more compounds whatever's going on, especially if they're dealing with some sort of a slump, or they're not dealing well with
Well,
something
they're
that's happening.
dealing actually. Then yeah, they're dealing with what their expectations of what they should be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was basically talking about a fan who's upset because they're losing because they
Um,
don't seem to be playing as well as
I'm
they
I'm gonna
can.
I'm just gonna I need you to adjust your mic. It's scratching on your beard.
Oh, hey, there we go.
There,
Hello.
there we go. Now we can hear
Okay.
you. That's better.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I
they're
sorry
two
sorry to
different
interrupt there. It's
scenarios.
just all I was getting was scratchy, scratchy, scratchy. So the pressure of
Okay.
having the money, um,
Hmm.
and knowing, especially when you are getting paid those big bucks, that your fans, your critics, your reporters
Hmm.
are all over that stuff. Um,
Yeah, yeah. It's like I said, when things are not going well, it certainly adds to the pressure on the player. But most of the pressure is yeah, their expectations, and I mean it could be the fans are relating it to money, the players relating it to inability to um, contribute to what
mhm,
their expectations are of the fans. So, when people start knocking on players because they're in slumps, I know there's slump breaking things. I used to work with an NHL player agent,
mhm,
and this is kind of funny. I haven't brought this up in about 100 years. Am I that old?
mhm.
Yeah, just about. Getting close. We used to videotape all of his players.
Yep.
We would videotape them, and take and store away when they were playing really, really well. And you're thinking, oh, well, you're storing it because you're playing really well and you want to follow it. But the expectation began was when a player went into a slump, for whatever reason it was, to try and find out what technical change you could make. We'd restructure and redo video when he isn't playing well and compare the two. sometimes we found in a number of cases could be nagging injuries, especially the superstar. He's got a nagging injury, he can't perform at his 100% normal. I mean, if you're a McDavid who hasn't
Mm-hmm.
scored as many goals this year as he had, I know he feels pressure if Edmonton isn't going to be in the final and take a run at the guy who's going to feel that the most is going to be him. But comparing the two is we try and figure out, number one, is it physical?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a physical, because he had a slightly pulled groin muscle, and we're not talking about Mededa, I'm talking about any player.
That could
Or
be anybody. Yeah.
yeah, anybody, any kind of injury. Did he tweak his shoulder? Not bad enough not to play, but bad enough not to keep you from playing at 100% of what your
Mm-hmm.
capability was. And then, because what a player does when he all of a sudden isn't performing, he makes changes. Oh, well, I can't shoot the puck on the left side. I can't get enough weight on my stick, so takes weight off his stick. And when you
Mm-hmm.
make those changes, it changes things. You hope that those things that you do change will allow you to perform better. But in some cases, it doesn't. So it just
Mm-hmm.
makes it worse. So basically, looking at what the physical end of it could be is just on comparison. But the harder part is the mental part,
Mm-hmm.
because those inabilities to be able to play because of a tweaked injury, now it starts to work in your head. And
Mm-hmm.
those can be incredibly difficult to assess, number one, and to correct, number two. So I have a favorite player that I worked with, his family, and specifically, I used to get along really well with his granddad, uh, Ryan Nugent Hopkins. I
Mm-hmm.
had his brother on a team, and I, had Ryan kicking around my dressing room where his little brother was playing, and he seems to be having a little bit of a difficult year, and I wonder if that didn't start with something that was physical that prevented maybe from his ability, or maybe he still got it. I mean, lots of these guys, they're making great money, but they play through some tremendously different or difficult situations.
Well, let
Be it
me
physical or be the mental.
let me highlight this. We're going to take it back to another bit out of Ted Lasso, starting this physical,
Oh,
mental sort of off the field here. They do end up needing some psychological help. They have to really get involved with one player who's
wasn't she
having a
awesome?
terrible. Well, we'll get to her in a bit as well. But yes, she was, because there's another. I do have another moment in there I want to get to involving her, but I'm talking about one of the players.
Mm,
He was going for a penalty kick, and unfortunately, the Greyhound dog that is the mascot for the team broke loose, got in the way, and was killed by the penalty kick.
penalty kick.
So that really had Danny Rojas on the show spun out. He
Yeah.
was a very happy-go-lucky, football is life. That was a terrible accent. I should never do that again. Sort of mentality, a wonderkin kind of player that slide a little something in there for everybody else that's seeing the show. And he can't, he's stuck in a mental game where he's now, football is death. He's
Mm-hmm.
now stuck thinking about this poor animal that he accidentally killed in a completely freak accident. Although Major League Baseball fans would say Randy Johnson has some really bad luck then because he blew up a couple of birds. But
Mm-hmm.
freak accidents do happen. I don't know how Randy Johnson felt about the birds, but we do know that Danny was
Upset
very,
with the
very out of
dog.
it. Very
Yep.
upset about the dog. So pulling a player out of that kind of a mental slump, or maybe even being in one yourself, because it's not like there's no pressure being behind the bench, especially if you own a stake in the team, or just vested in these developments of these kids. So those kind of huge off the field traumatic events. This one sort of involves, you know, bringing in a professional psychologist. Sorry. Um, so have you gone through much of that? You've seen some of the more brutal mental mess arounds out there. So what are your thoughts on getting those things out of the way and getting the potential back on the field or on the ice?
See a professional. I've gone through some tough things, including, you know, the coming up year with the Clippers that the kids at the summer time had come back for a wedding,
Mm-hmm.
and of one of the Billets kids getting married, and they got into a very serious car accident where three of them
Yeah.
were severely injured and one died,
Mm-hmm.
and that was crushing. Uh, it's crushing to this day actually. So
Mm-hmm.
all moves forward, but it was uh, it was a very tough part, and there's lots of other things that can, doesn't have to be death, but there's lots and lots of other things that can affect an athlete and their performance. And I'm not a professional. I'm a practicer, but I'm not a professional,
Mm-hmm.
or wasn't. And I, in those kinds of circumstances, you need to, you know, I tried basically, I tried to keep it together. I tried not to find responsibility for anybody. Fortunately, none of the players that were injured were actually responsible. They were all passengers,
Mm-hmm.
and it's but it doesn't seem to matter when it gets to that level. Um, I remember that night second for second, and
I bet.
I wouldn't say it haunts me, but I've never been quite so thankful for the ability of three of them to survive.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never been so distressed as to, you know, as you always feel like maybe there's something that one could do just because you
Yep.
know them. You always
Mm-hmm.
feel that there's something that you could do, and
Survivor's guilt to a
yeah,
degree. Just
yeah,
what could I
yeah,
have done?
I,
What if I had done this? What if I had done that?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's it. Hey, they're all coming back from a wedding at 12 o'clock at night from the
mhm.
reception. I should have said, hey, okay, you guys aren't going out. I had not realized that. Well, didn't matter what I did or didn't realize. Yes, that's haunted me for like ever.
Mhm.
Uh, I wouldn't say it's a highlight, but I guess it is. It's a
Well,
life
I
highlight, not a hockey highlight. So
yeah, I mean it's a memorable moment. Highlight is usually referred to something positive, but no, it
yes,
absolutely is the correct word for this. Um, it low light maybe. But I do remember a good chunk of that because I mean at that point I would have been 7 or 8. I'd
yep.
have to look up the exact date of that, but it's not something. But I do remember there was it was weird getting up that day,
Yep.
the morning after. It was weird, kind of not seeing him around the dressing room
Hmm.
because that Greg and I were in and around the rink. We were, you know, uh, we were around the players, and then all of a sudden this one's gone, and um, all the memorial stuff came out, and the dark cloud over the house, and uh, newspapers is my dad's in the newspaper again.
Hmm.
All sorts of stuff like that, and even just the survivors. I mean, um,
They were
Buzzy
very,
was
yeah,
very involved and very cool with Greg and I when we were, and then he was in that car, and
yeah.
I'm glad he survived. Saw him a few years ago. He was last I heard he was doing fine down in Northern California there, but that
Another fitness guy.
yeah. Well, I mean that seems to be a thing.
We
Uh,
developed a few of them.
Yeah, I mean, it really is because you guys are, athletes are all in the habit of getting in and out of the gym and staying fit. Um, Now, I would imagine that took a lot of the players' heads out of the rest of the season. Um, yeah, I can't imagine very many people in that situation, not just the ones that were involved in the actual incident, but anybody in the locker room, the dressing room, being blasé about it, to say the least. I mean that that's more than just a dog. That's more than just hitting a bird with a baseball bat or a baseball. That's right up there, especially at the age these kids were. 'Cause, I mean, we're talking 16, 17, 18-year-olds at the time, yeah?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think Nichols was a 17-year-old. Buzz was an 18-year-old. Len Evans was a 19-year-old. And
Mhm,
the car driver he's a little older.
mhm.
So, but yeah, they were all to be returning members of the team thereafter. And I mean, both Buzz and Nichols spent quite a lot of time in the hospital after that too. So
Yes, they did. Yeah, I definitely remember that. It was a weird start to the summer or the spring, 'cause that happened just after or just before the season began?
yeah, just before.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they'd
Yeah.
all been there the year before that,
Mhm.
and yeah. So, gosh,
Alright, so
this is one I
we're
didn't want to talk about.
no, no, this well, you brought it up.
I
Uh,
did. I know.
um, I mean,
I did. We're
I had almost forgotten about it. I hadn't thought about it in years.
yeah.
Um, that's
I
and
wished I hadn't.
unfortunately, that's not the only dark tale that had to be mentally stressing, but we'll get into that other one a little down the line as
Mhm.
we're sort of coming into our last 10 or 15 minutes here. There's something else from season one I wanted to discuss at Ted Lasso. The team
Oh
is
yeah.
facing relegation, uh,
Uh-huh. Not
and
making playoffs.
not,
That's the
yeah.
equivalent.
Well, I mean that it's not though. It's
No.
not making the playoffs, except if you were I don't even know how the playoff standings are going right now, but if the Vancouver Canucks
Mhm.
were to miss the playoffs and that involved relegation, for those of you out there that are not
Yeah.
familiar with the English football tier system, the Canucks would go down to
To
like
the
the
American Hockey
BCJHL.
League. Yeah.
They would go one rung down. It would be the Abbotsford Canucks in a whole different aspect.
Two
They would have
Abbotsford Canucks.
That's right. I mean, talk about that'd be your SkyTrain series if they ever get this
Yeah.
the SkyTrain out that direction.
You know what? The Canucks, have fought their way back too with the injuries that they've had. I think that
Mhm,
they've played about as well as they could. I mean, their game with New York was, I mean, they really played New York well, and given fair for fair effort and everything, they probably should have won that. But last night's game, oh my
mhm,
God, with New Jersey, another game where they tie it up with, under a minute left to go in the game.
mhm.
And it, and who were they missing? I mean, they were missing Pedersen but Demko. Oh my goodness, I am
Oh,
pulling
he's
so hard for the Canucks because they drop themselves in a hole and they climb till they're just about out, and then they drop down into that hole again.
well,
And
I mean,
I have a big heart for Vancouver this year.
and that is an awful lot like season 1 Richmond Greyhounds.
Mhm,
But the point I wanted to get to, especially this time of year,
mhm.
the locker room speeches. This particular one we're going to reference from the final episode of season 1 of Ted Lasso. Little Quiet Nate, who was basically the shoe kid, the kit man.
Yep.
He's I guess the trainer is pretty close if you don't follow soccer. The team trainer,
Mhm.
um, he's very quiet, very shy. He's very bullied by some of the team members. He steps up, steps out of his comfort zone. 'Cause he's a very smart football, very coach, very knowledgeable in the game, and runs down a list very harshly to the players to motivate them. Now this is a fairly
Ah,
big trope in sports movies. It's between the second and third period, between the innings, between at halftime, the rah speech, the we got to get your shit together, get out there and win, whether or not they do in the end. And I imagine this stuff is really starting almost now as teams are looking at mathematical elimination or um,
they're all
the
playoff games
seeding.
now. A lot of people
Mhm,
look at playoffs as playoffs, but I mean the teams that are, within 2 or 3 points of making it or being out of it, they're all playoff games right now.
mhm,
Every one of
yep.
them.
Well, it's like NASCAR. You want that running start. You don't want to be trying to say, okay, it's game 1 of the playoffs. Now I'm going to find fifth gear. No,
Not
you,
happening.
uh, you know, but the speech trope that we see in so many of these movies and TV shows. What sort of impact do you see those have? What are the do's and don'ts for all the coaches out there that'll be listening to this, um, sort of getting ready to give one? What's
It's
some
a
of your
little.
tips and pointers and memories of maybe it did or didn't work? What's going on there?
Oh my goodness! Wow. uh, they may be the most important words at the most important time that you're going to say all year long. Um, you when you're down in a game during the regular season and you go in and give a little pep and come on guys, let's go, we need these
Hmm.
2 points. It's a whole lot different, in terms of the urgency and the response that you need to have a coach is, come on guys, or we're finished for the year and I'd like to play another month or so. They have to be inspiring, and what they have to be, you can't physically inspire them,
Hmm.
really. It has to be
Yep.
mental. It has to be those things are 100% mental. You can't just say, "Okay, guys, let's go out and work."
Hmm.
Because you've said that 1,000 times this year already when you were losing 2-1 going into the third period. It has to be something that's high on the emotional release for a coach and inspirational for a player.
Hmm.
And generally, I do a little thinking and a little rehearsing going into those situations. You know, whether you're ahead by one or you're down by one, they're too critical for what everybody's goal is, which is to play past. And
Hmm.
I love Rick Tocchet. I hope someday to get to meet him. I've never met Rick, but lots of Vancouver coaches that I have met, and I think he's a very cerebral, physical force. How's that for a
Hmm.
description of Rick Tocchet?
Yeah, I think
And
that's a very
he's
good way to put his reputation. Is it sort of
yeah,
encompasses
yeah.
the
He
scope?
he he does inspire players to be
Hmm.
better, and sometimes as players you play and you play and you play and you play, and You play and you play and you play. And you need that. It's not that you're not working hard enough at practice, or because you've developed that attitude, you are not working hard in practice. You have to
Hmm.
press that. But when it comes to the dressing room and between the second and third periods, that's a whole nother thing. And a coach, I think a coach has to develop his own particular style. Like I
Hmm.
could write a script for what I've done and hand it off and been successful at, and hand it off to the next coach. you know, you may not
Hmm.
have the same emotional attachment as I do, or it could be anything else. It's just you really have to rely on yourself. You have to know your team. You have
Hmm.
to know what's going to inspire them, what's going to get them to all of a sudden, you know, if they need to wake up. I mean, if it isn't a question of waking them up because they're playing bad, then somehow you've got to motivate them to be better than they normally are. To
Hmm.
maybe be the best that they've been for 5 shifts in a period, and
Right.
and you get your success, and or you don't, and you don't have your success, and everybody's going home early, which nobody wants. For those
No,
teams who
nobody.
already know they haven't made the playoffs, oh my God, it's got to be a huge crisis. And it's amazing what some teams do. Some teams that are out of the playoff all of a sudden start blasting all the teams that are ahead of them.
Hmm.
They're out of the playoffs. So what's the reason? Pressure's off. As a competitor, you've got to be able to adjust to pressure. You've got to be
Hmm.
able to accept pressure.
Well, I mean,
And
there's also the I want to leave a good impression for anybody watching factor. Um,
yeah, and sometimes there's just the vengeance.
oh
And
God,
you
yeah,
know,
just
I for those players who all of a sudden start to play, uh,
yeah.
when we're out of the playoffs and now they're playing like crazy, right? They're playing for a job but they're going to go right back to where they were
Hmm.
next year.
The
Playoff players are playoff players. Regular season players. I hope you're all great. Hope you all contribute in the playoffs. But those guys who bring another level every time it hits
Mhm.
playoffs. And how many stories do we know of athletes who are good athletes, but as playoff athletes, they're
Different.
extraordinary superstars?
Well,
And
I mean, and
that's
that
just
works
the
both
player
ways again too,
attitude, I think.
right? There's for everything we discuss, there's that player that might be a great regular season player. He's the
Yeah.
one that's going to get him to the playoffs, and then for whatever reason, as soon as the playoffs hit, maybe not
But
so
he
much.
doesn't
Maybe,
have he doesn't have the next step.
yeah.
That guy has come and played as well as he could all year long. Now it's a step up. He doesn't
Hmm.
have a step
He
up to
doesn't have the
go to.
gear.
He doesn't
He
have
doesn't.
the gear.
He's first and fourth, and there's fifth gear doesn't exist, and
Yep.
that's an interesting dynamic
That's
because
what
I
I
mean there
think.
is also that sometimes it is just what, my contract's locked down. I'm not going anywhere. I don't have
Mhm.
to worry about this. I have a job next year. I have a spot. I'm going to be out on the lake tubing, and I'm going to be out on the links golfing next week. But f you,
Mhm.
I'm not done playing yet.
Yeah.
Factor. That FU
That's
factor
that's
of
that's the playoff
if I'm
player.
going down, I'm going down swinging.
Like I really want to see. I get. I wouldn't say. Yeah, I was amazed at how well the Canucks did last year, but I think that they played within their ability. It wasn't something that was incredibly outstanding. It was just they played well. You know,
Mhm.
they happened to land some pretty good goaltending. But I want to see this year's Canucks team make it,
Mhm.
because I've seen so much of the down and them crawl their way back up and then down and then crawl their way back up. I want to know how many of those players are playoff players. Like they make the
It's
playoffs, they have brought it back from the pit a number of times. If they can all bring it back from the pit, then it's going to
mhm.
be it'll be good to watch the
Yeah,
Canucks play. I'm
it's
only talking
definitely
about
gonna
the
be
Canucks,
interesting.
and I have so many kids on
No,
other
that's
teams. But
you know what? That's fine because as the playoffs sort of get locked in, as we sort of get down the line, we'll be
yeah,
discussing that leading into that whole bracket. But I just want to touch on one more thing regarding little Nate getting in there with the big boys and reading off his list of how you can
yeah,
do better.
good
You did
list.
mention in as you're off in the weeds there, sometimes you tag in a different voice in the room.
Hmm.
Might be your assistant coach,
Hmm.
might be a player. I mean, in this case, Nate was still the kit man, or
Yep,
at the very least, he was the third assistant coach of the
yep.
team. He was the one that got in there, gave him the speech, ran down what needed to happen. Ted let it happen. The players let it happen. Now you see an awful lot of times, again, these in the movies and the TV shows, it's the team captain or the main the protagonist, the main character in that particular story stands up and gives the speech. As for a coach, at what factors into sort of tagging out on that? Is it just maybe you're as you mentioned, you don't have the connection emotionally to what would motivate them and say the assistant coach does, or it's is it time for the coaches to tag out because players only meeting, boys, because you got to police yourself? What are the factors in there that you've seen as far as the coach stepping out for somebody else to be that voice for that big last minute push speech?
Yeah, no, I've done that a couple of times. You know, I have to analyze what's my value.
Mm-hmm.
Every player has a value, and the coach has a value too. And if I can't make the connection because of something going on in my head, then and it's an important situation, then yeah, find something different. It's like I said, you've got to find a spark. The same old thing
Mm-hmm.
sometimes isn't the spark you need. It's something different. You've got to look around and see what that can be. Ted found a pretty good one because
Mm-hmm.
his his kit manager and
Mm-hmm.
third assistant coach was a brilliant strategist and evaluations, and
Mm-hmm.
he evaluated them that they really had to take a quick look and go, hey, I'm more than that, or I can
Mm-hmm.
be more than that.
Or
And
this is
yeah,
in some cases, this is where I'm making an awful mess of it.
yep,
Um, so it was, yeah, that was and I think in this case, in the Ted Lasso case, it was more of the kit man
yep,
is
in this case. But like,
noticing
it
all of
doesn't
these
have to be
things.
that. That was just going to be,
Mhm,
yeah, a difference that would enthusiastically get the players to perform at the best they
mhm,
can perform, whether they're successful or not. They were given the opportunity to be successful, whereas somebody else, if you'd have dropped in, that may not have happened. The spark just
mhm,
wasn't there. You've got to look at I mean, you as a coach, you always want to be as successful as you can for your players, and coaches who are looking to be as successfully as they can for themselves, generally, I would say the majority of the times are going to end up unsuccessful because they didn't have, the support from the players or the team that they needed. And I know a lot of coaches who are only looking to elevate themselves to the next
mhm,
coaching level. I've been I've been fairly fortunate. I just dropped in and coached and had a good time. And somebody else said at a higher level, "Well, you come and do that with us," and I did, and I was successful. And I got asked again. I I I I was fortunate in the fact that wherever I went, somebody asked me to go there. It wasn't a
mhm,
question of applying and making people who don't know you. So I guess I'm saying that my stairway was paved with the people that I know that
mhm,
were either above me or below me, guys from
mhm.
below pushing or guys from above pulling. So, mhm, yeah, lot.
Interesting. So it's just you just got to know who's going to have the most effect there if you're going to give that speech. It sounds like.
Yes, you do. You
Um,
got to know who's going to be the most effective. And I,
So
I've brought in an up.
take the
I Matt,
ego out of it seems to be a message.
listen, I have had a trainer do that speech.
Hmm.
I had an opposition coach of the team that we beat out in the round before
Hmm.
come in the dressing room because we appreciated each other's strengths. He was a
Right.
different kind of coach than what I was, but he was a very successful coach. And he came down to the dressing room to, because we respected each other. And he gave me a thought. And like I said, we'd just beaten his team out, I don't know, about 7 days before that. And I told him, you know what, that's a great message.
Hmm.
You know what? I want you to deliver it. And we did.
That it sounds like it worked.
Oh, it did. We were through to the next round, and
Yep.
you know, in the beginning, we were my first junior coaching years. I would consider bitter enemies,
Hmm.
and you learn respect for people after a while. But
Hmm.
yeah, he came in, and I said, "Hey, listen, that would certainly be a different way to deliver a message. How would you like to go and come in and tell the kids how much you think?" He was coming down because he wanted to see us win,
Hmm.
because he didn't want to say that they lost to a loser. But that's the
Right.
kind of guy he was,
Well,
and he
it's
was well respected. Not liked by a lot of people, but very well respected for his ability to get the most out of a hockey team.
yeah, there is that
You don't want
mentality
names, do you?
in humanity. No, we won't
I
start
don't
throwing
want
names under the
names.
bus
No,
just yet, unless he wants to come on and or is on and
no.
you guys want to
Unfortunately,
remember it together.
yeah, he's
But
passed away. So,
oh, that's a shame. Um,
yeah, too young.
yeah, that's no good.
But it's
That's
a
it,
memory
it
for me. You
I
know,
bet you it is, and that's a wonderful highlight because I mean there's fundamentals. We talk about this show. People are like, oh, you just talk about the players and helping the players. And yeah, but you've got a lot of coaching experience. It's not just you can coach the coaches. There are young coaches out there that can listen to this, or kids coming up that are listening to this that their playing days may not take them to the top level, but maybe a suit and tie and a bench is their path, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it is, you got to coach the coaches. You got to take the ego out of it. When your team needs that boost, if you don't have it and the opposing coach does, or the coach you just defeated does, why not if they're into it? That's a fantastic story. I don't think I had heard that one before.
no, I think other than me and the players were there, and I don't know whether they'd remember it or not. See, a couple of the players in our dressing room had played for this coach a couple of years
Hmm.
before that, and yeah, no, it it's a we have 1,000 stories if you want to
Yeah,
hear
well, you know what?
one
And
at a
that's good. We're
time.
gonna we're gonna keep getting them out here. Let's try and do this again next week. We'll see what's going on. I know you're gonna be out of town, so if we skip a week, ladies and gentlemen, we are sorry. We're not going anywhere. I got my schedule to a point where I am able to book things like this. It's
Yeah,
summer, so there will be no snowbirding from. And you said that up north or at the beginning of the podcast, but you're
yeah.
really not that far north when you look at
No,
it on a
actually,
map.
I say South Caribou. I'm kind of looking at the lower
Yeah.
mainland, and 100 Mile House. I
Well,
mean, it's
there's
5.5 hours away. It seems like, but you know what? We had snow the other day,
yeah,
and it was gone by the morning. But we've had 2 or 3 feet of
yeah.
snow only for a couple of weeks this year. Most of it's a little chilly, but we haven't had a lot of what I would consider up north weather.
Yeah,
And
but you got to. My point was sort of leading to when you look at BC, we say up north because there's a certain point about halfway up. It's few and far between.
yep,
Um, But so you enjoy that. You enjoy that
Yeah.
100-mile hockey team. If you guys are out there, watch Ted Lasso. I gave you some spoilers, but that's mostly coaching stuff. The jokes are still there. Um, Big Roy Kent fan. Big Roy
Yes,
Kent fan.
huge Roy
Um,
Kent fan. I've had some
and
captains like Roy Kent. They're awesome.
yeah, so we'll spend some time talking about those archetypes down the road, because the Jamie Tart character, the prima donna, um, I just love the way they developed this character, the way they got into it, the way
Oh, I
he
love.
grew.
Yeah, he sure
And
did.
my favorite thing about that is we'll get out of here because we are just about at an hour and 10. At the beginning, all he wore was on his head was a hat that said icon.
Yeah.
In the last few episodes of season 3, his hat said I cog, as in he is recognized that he is a cog in the
Part
machine.
of. Yeah.
So the Jamie Kent and the Roy Kent character, or the Jamie Tart and the Roy Kent characters, are just fascinating archetypes for just players in general. And again, any sport, it could be proper football, American football, hockey, basketball, cricket, darts, whatever it is. If it's a team sport, these guys are there. You can always find that player. Anyways, we will be back as we get
Be
closer
great.
to
Why, Matt?
I wasn't
Because you
listening.
can.
Thanks, ladies and
Bye,
gentlemen.
Matt.